Director John Halikowski, thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking about knowledge management. And the first question I have out of the gate is, what was the background that led to Domestic Scan 1204? Some of the background about this and how it came to be for knowledge management.
Well, thank you, Laura. I'm very pleased to be here today talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is knowledge management and how it affects departments of transportation. The background is, I think, fairly obvious to a lot of people. Society and especially economic pressures are changing, and in the case of the economy, continuing to put pressure on departments of transportation to be more efficient, not only with the transportation system itself, but also to be able to extract as much value out of our employees as we possibly can. So as we look out into the world of what's happening from a social standing, we see a lot of demographic changes in DOTs. We see many generations, up to 5 in some cases, of workers within DOTs that are coming from different age groups and backgrounds. And as we are looking into the future and experiencing somewhat right now, retirements of folks who have been with us for 30 or more years who have a lot of knowledge in their heads about how to accomplish an efficient transportation system in its construction, development, maintenance. We have to somehow transfer that knowledge to the younger generation of employees coming in who may be more technologically savvy or perhaps more oriented to using technology to find information. But as we know, that know-how of how to get things done very often isn't something that's always found in a book. It's found by experience. So DOTs and senior management are looking at how we utilize these tools in this discipline called knowledge management to transfer that knowledge to our younger employees.
So that sounds like that can be somewhat challenging, bridging that gap from the older employees to the newer, younger employees. What was really the focus of this scan as you moved along throughout it?
It is a challenge, as you can imagine, because there are different ways of communicating between generations. And the focus of the scan was to look at some successful companies out there who have employed knowledge management and employed the 10 facets of knowledge management in transferring that knowledge base. Very often people think of knowledge management as simply data and moving data perhaps from one storage medium to another. And it's really a lot more than that. It's really about not only how you transfer knowledge, but how you communicate it, disseminate it, retrieve it, utilize it in your business, not only for day-to-day activities, but for forecasting. And it presents, if you will, a very comprehensive way of looking at your business in order to make sure that you're using the knowledge that you have to have your organization run as efficiently as possible. So with the economic pressures that we've been facing as DOTs and the expectations of the public, we really are looking at, as we move into the 21st century, how we can take the knowledge that we have and make the system and our people as effective as they possibly can be.
Great. Well, describe the SCAN team participants. It sounds like this was really a combination of both the public and the private sector in order to get this going, especially here at the Arizona DOT.
It is very much a public-private sector partnership, if you will. The SCAN was made up of people not only from DOTs within the U.S., but also from folks from Alberta, Canada. And so we had a little international flair there, if you will. But we learned valuable lessons. We interviewed 14 different organizations, everyone ranging from Kraft Foods to NASA to Accenture to the folks from Alberta, Canada, in their practices of how they implement knowledge management and disseminate knowledge within their particular companies.
And what were some of the findings of this scan? And it sounds like there was really a couple of standout companies when we're talking about creating a knowledge book or a knowledge map to really carry us forward.
Sure, and it's funny you mentioned knowledge book because Kraft Foods, who was one of the companies that we interviewed, certainly we all know their macaroni is the cheesiest, but the recipe for making that cheesy macaroni actually we understood resided in one person's head. And that person was getting ready to retire, and Kraft Foods was looking at how do we make sure that we take that knowledge and not lose what is a product or a process that's of great value to our company. And so they created a knowledge book, which is a PDF-based book whereby recipes, experiences, all sorts of different tacit knowledge, that know-how, can be recorded and transferred for employees to access and to look at. Another, well, it's not a company, but government type of company we looked at was NASA. And as you know, NASA suffered some pretty severe disasters with the 2 space shuttles that they lost. And so NASA came in and talked to us about how important it was for them to discuss lessons learned and to be open to changing their process, how to teach middle managers to speak up and talk about what is going right in the process and what's not working to avoid those disasters in the future. So as we look at DOTs, we all do multi-million-dollar projects. Someone's doing them in the country every single day, and there are lessons to be learned from those. And how we transfer that knowledge from old hands, so to speak, to younger folks who are moving up in the organization and mentoring them becomes extremely important. The other company I'll mention is Accenture. 34,000 people working around the world, and they have to find a way to connect and share knowledge within their company. They used a different thing, inserted a little fun into the process called gamification. And what Accenture did was essentially tell its employees that we're going to provide you with our own internal Facebook site, and we want you to write about your experiences and what's going on in the company. And the more that you do that and the more people access those, you can earn badges on your website. And so they utilized those to talk about their accomplishments when they're interviewing for jobs or looking at promotions or raises. So that idea of gamification is something that really tied their company together around the world. And lastly, I'll mention Alberta because we felt they stood out too, as their employees are mentored through their organization and gain in knowledge and experience. At some point, they're awarded pins, like this nice little director's pin I have here, and they actually have quite a ceremony when you graduate from that mentoring process up to the next level, and senior management provides you with a pin that you wear proudly, that you have gained knowledge and moved to another level.
So all very good ideas from very good companies and organizations.
Yes.
What do you see the Arizona DOT doing, or what have we already done to put this type of practice into place?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned what we've already done, because a lot of the DOTs are already employing at least one or more of the 10 facets of knowledge management. They're really good business practices, but people employ them without even knowing that they're doing them. Whether they're mentoring programs, whether they're programs to capture knowledge on some sort of medium and transfer that to other people, whether they're programs to look at performance measurements, all of these things fit into how you look at and assess the performance of your organization and allow you to plan on how you'll make improvements to it. So from Arizona DOT's perspective, we're looking at a number of things, and we have a very active mentor program going on. We have a very active lessons learned exercise we do after major projects. We have looked at how we pair up people to work with more experienced employees in the onboarding, the employee orientation process. We're looking at how our data is captured and how easy information is to retrieve. So there's a number of different things that you can be looking at. I would say probably nobody does all 10 and does them at a very high level. Usually they're focused on 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 different things. But if I look out there at the U.S., Virginia DOT has an excellent program, and it's survived through at least 4 secretaries. So obviously they found value in it and when they started, and so has each succeeding administration in that DOT, and kept the program alive and well. So really it comes down to how do you communicate and share knowledge within your organization to make sure that you're working as efficiently as you can without wasting resources.
Anything else that you would like to discuss before we end our conversation?
Well, I would like folks to simply explore a little bit of knowledge management by picking it up and looking at the 10 facets. I think that they'll find that that's a smart way to run your business. A lot of times when you mention the word knowledge management, people think that it only applies perhaps to data storage, data collection, or data transmission. It's a great deal more than that. There is really a both machine and human component here, and I think it's very important as we look at changing demographics and scarcer resources in the future with higher public expectations. We're going to have to get very smart about how we use our knowledge to make sure that our organizations are operating at peak efficiency.